So I thought I'd just introduce our um, monastery a little bit, and then a little bit about the way we practice meditation. So as Ajahn Nando mentioned, I'm from Na Uyana Monastery, and probably some of you haven't heard of it. It was in the news a couple weeks ago. There was a really bad cable car accident, and some monks died. And due to that, I think, uh, so yeah, it's become temporarily a bit more high profile. It's one of the few meditation monasteries that is training foreign monks. So we have an English medium program as well as a Sinhala program. And previously there was a Chinese program for the Chinese monks, but I think that's kind of fallen away. And it's very much a traditional system. So it's following the Visuddhimagga. It's very traditional Theravada. So depending on which meditation tradition you're coming from, it may be very similar or it might not be. So typically, if somebody comes to our monastery and they want to learn meditation, the first thing they learn about are the four what we call guardian meditations. And so the four guardian meditations are Buddha Nusati, recollection of the qualities of the Buddha, and Marana Nusati, recollection of death, Asubha, which is basically the 32 parts of the body, and Metta, or loving kindness meditation. And the reason we start with these guardian meditations is they're considered to be suitable for all meditators. Each one of them is aimed at overcoming one of the hindrances. So we have different kinds of mental obstacles to meditation. And so, uh, because when somebody comes to a monastery, the situation is a little different than going on a 10-day retreat. If you're going on an intensive retreat, then you have a teacher to keep track of you every day, and they can give you advice on how to control your mind. So if you start to become upset about something, then you can go and consult with a teacher. Our monastery is 5,000 acres, and the teacher is traveling a lot internationally. So we don't always have a teacher there with us, although we do have other monks to talk to. We have sort of mentor monks and Vinaya teachers. So for lay meditators, they tend to teach these objects to help meditators learn to balance their own mind. And so when they learn the different objects, they learn what kind of effects it has on their mind. And when they find they can meditate calmly, maybe they don't have deep concentration, but they can basically keep their mind balanced for throughout the day, then they start to practice anapanasati meditation or mindfulness of breathing. And as I mentioned, in our tradition, we focus on the breath at the nostrils and not necessarily the same as other traditions. So um, we don't follow the breath in and out from the nostrils. We just focus on that one point. And the reason is we have quite a systematic training in the meditation side that maybe you can see some traditions they prefer to combine certain steps together. Now, if you focus on the breath, for example, and you could also start to focus on the four elements. So you could focus on the warmth at the nostrils, or you could focus on heat at the nostrils, the sensation of pushing at the nostrils, the sensation of vibration. Or you could focus on the mental qualities that are occurring. So you can focus on whatever, if perhaps you have some memory coming up and you remember something from childhood and you have some reaction, positive or negative. You remember something that makes you happy, you remember something that makes you upset, and you might focus on those different qualities. So in some traditions, they'll combine all of these steps together. But in our tradition, what they do is they try to get you to focus on the breath for a longer time. Usually, if you can focus on the breath for a few hours, the mind becoming very calm and concentrated. And then when the mind is calm like that, then it's very easy to direct towards another object. So you might direct more detail towards the mind, trying to investigate the way different mental states arise in your mind. So typically we would try to get the meditator to develop their concentration to a strong way, and then they can investigate the positive mental qualities first and try to understand what the concentrated mind is like. And so, for example, if somebody's mind is concentrated, obviously they're going to have mindfulness. So they're recollecting that object of the breath. And then they're going to have this collectedness, or sometimes translated as one-pointedness. But of course, it wouldn't necessarily be at one point. It's possible to focus on an object that's larger or smaller. And there'll be qualities of energy, and there might be a quality of happiness, there might be a quality of faith. So there are different sets of qualities that will arise with the wholesome mind. And so after getting the meditator to investigate those, then we get them to try to investigate the negative qualities. And so we have our anger in all of its different modes. So, for example, fears or anxieties or jealousies or other negative states like restlessness or greed. So we have, so various different steps to the meditation. Now, the disadvantage of this system, this kind of system for meditators, because I gather most of you are in Canada, probably most of you have jobs. You don't have like 5 hours a day to meditate. So it's a big disadvantage with this kind of a system because it can take very long time to move from one object to another. And because of that, it's very helpful to do some kind of like to divide our meditation time. So even if you can't do like whatever system you're practicing in, I don't know exactly. I guess Ajananda is probably teaching you Anapanasati first, but it's also helpful to do some reading and learn some suttas and to think about the suttas. So if you're meditating for, say you have half hour or 1 hour to meditate, if you can spend part of that time reading some sutta and then reflecting on that meeting. So we have the three kinds of wisdoms. We have the Chintamaya Panya, the wisdom that comes from thinking about and pondering a subject. And we have Suttamaya Panya, the wisdom that comes from hearing or learning a topic. We have Bhavanamaya Panya, the wisdom that comes from development, that comes from our meditation. So whatever you're experiencing in your meditation, whether it's going very smoothly or you're having a lot of trouble with it, and you always have these other two kinds of wisdom you can develop. Now, this word sutta, not sutta, but S-U-T-A, without the double T, it means to hear something. And so, of course, in the Buddhist time, people would not be learning from books. They'd actually have to approach a teacher. And so there's a lot of advice in the ancient texts about how to approach a teacher, what sort of attitude one should have when approaching a teacher, and sort of how to associate with that teacher so that you can get the sort of proper advice that you need. So in the modern day, you also have books. It's also possible for you to watch YouTube videos, etc., which can be an advantage or a disadvantage because it means you have to use your own judgment quite a lot. So you should have some kind of a basic knowledge of the tradition. If you want to sort of learn about all kinds of Buddhism, that's fine, but you should have sort of some kind of basic knowledge of traditional Buddhism so you can know what has been, like where things are coming from. And so when the Buddha talks about this learning, he's very, very specific. He never says you should just learn. There are certain things that we're supposed to do, and when we learn something, we have to keep it in mind. And so, of course, in the Buddhist time, that meant to actually keep it in mind, to recite it, to remember it, which is something that a lot of people still do in traditional Buddhist countries, especially for the more popular protective chants, but also for longer. For example, the Abhidhamma texts you can see in Myanmar, people remember these texts by heart. It's not really necessary for you to memorize the Pali, especially if you don't understand Pali. But if you can remember the meaning, it's very helpful. So the Ajahn Chah group is using this English chanting book. They have like one, usually they'll, in their monasteries, they alternate. One day they'll chant Pali, one day they'll chant English. And so, for example, the Karaniyametta Sutta, you have the English and the Pali. So if you don't really understand the Pali, at least you can be familiar with the different stanzas in English. And so some of the suttas that we chant are very pithy, and they have the entire path laid out in very rough sketch, of course. So I would suggest if you only know, you're only going to sort of learn the meaning of one sutta, you could choose either Karaniyametta Sutta or Mangala Sutta, because both of these suttas starts from a very basic level, and it ends up sort of moving towards quite high levels, especially Mangala Sutta, Asevana Chabalanang Panditanang cha Sevana. It starts with associating with a wise person, not having to associate with fools. This is a blessing. And then it ends up with overcoming all suffering and living in the world without any kind of kilesa. This is a kind of this is the highest blessing. So